I've asked you this question before. I think you might have made a post on this. I know Gary Ward has talked about this, I believe, in his book, What the Foot. But we see a lot of the toe outs. We see a lot of the duck walk, especially kind of with after quarantine, more people are sitting, and it seems like sitting for whatever reason. You probably know the reason. But for whatever reason, I think when people are sedentary, it seems like they're kind of more duck walkers. But you had an interesting point on it about how it's very possible that maybe they don't know how to pronate, and so they're finding a way to get off that, feel the big toe. Mm-hmm. Elaborate on that a little bit.
Sure. So when we go through this normal gait cycle, like let's say this is my heel, this is my big toe right here. We strike the ground with our heel, then we roll, and our arch needs to drop, and then we push off through our big toe, and our arch re-rises again.
And when he says arch drop, that doesn't mean that like the pinky toe's coming off.
Yes.
A lot of people, they make that mistake. They think that pronation is bad because they associate it with complete like ankle collapse.
Great. Yeah, great point. Because real pronation is relative motion between the forefoot and the rear foot. So if this is the back of my foot right here, this is the front of my foot, really what's happening is it's more of a rotation like this, rather than the whole thing just flopping inwards. Really, this goes out and then this goes in more so. So it's more of this rotation like so. This is really what pronation is rather than that. Mm-hmm. So it's important to recognize that. I'm glad you said that, because pronation is a natural thing that needs to happen, and we need to find it, because that's our arch dropping, which allows us to shift our body weight over that foot. Because if we had a rigid foot when our body weight was trying to go over that foot, we would probably fall off to the side, because we can't get that yielding. We can't get those tissues to elongate to get our body weight over there. So when someone can't pronate properly, then usually what someone likes to do is find a strategy or compensation to do it. So a lot of times, let's say, for example, through a normal heel to toe, they just couldn't find that pronation. They might turn their foot out. So now when they strike the ground, they're going to strike with more of the inside of their heel, and then their foot is going to go right into the inner edge, and then they're going to for sure pronate then. Mm-hmm. But then they're compromised with their ability to re-rise that arch. So it's a give and take a little bit. But again, doesn't mean it's necessarily a problem. It's a problem when it becomes a problem, and then this person starts to get injured, or there's significant red flags within their movement. So just because these things exist do not mean they are bad, but they could be red flags for other things, other limitations happening. Another way you can see it is if you have, let's say, that anterior pelvic tilt where the pelvis is forward on both sides. What that does is that biases our leg bones, our femurs, to turn inwards into internal rotation. So if everything is going into internal rotation, what you could see is the lower leg bones, the tibias, the shins turn outward to find a degree of external rotation, because we need to constantly be going through internal and external rotation on both sides. That's the whole name of the game, is to be able to do both. It's not like one is bad and one is good. It's depending on the context of movement, it's going to be appropriate at one time or another, but both need to happen. So if we're only in internal rotation, when the pelvis tips forward, that's what happens, then our shins might need to find that external rotation. So they might turn out, and then you have that duck foot presentation. And this can happen on one or both sides.
Yeah.